I'll show you Ruthie. This is Ruthie. She's a Nigerian dwarf goat that we saved from freezing to death after her mama rejected her. This is her first day trying to be an outside goat, and so I was a little concerned about her, so I came out here to do a video. She was just hanging out in the sun, laying down, enjoying it. So I brought her something to eat because I'm tied to my notes, and she loves to eat paper. So I've got paper here. So anyway, I'm gonna hang out with Ruthie, and I'm gonna do a session. Speaking of hanging out, something I haven't seen in a while, which I'm not sure if it's me or if it's culture, but something that happened in my house a lot when I was little was my folks hanging out with other people, with young people, with friends, with missionaries, with whoever, and drinking coffee. I hate coffee. I cannot stand coffee. I just do not like it. I don't like anything about it. It smells like burnt tire rubber. But I loved those coffee sessions because that was just, I don't know, just something about hanging out, talking. And it's funny, we were driving through Port Angeles the other day, and that's about 15 miles from where I grew up. And we would keep our boat there. We were commercial fishermen, and we would keep our boat there. And so many times my dad would say, well, I got to go check the boat. Even when he didn't have a season going, he wasn't fishing. And he would go down and fuss around with the boat and do some busy jobs. And then he'd go sit in the coffee shop for an hour or two. And he'd talk to the guys there about commercial fishing and whatever else. And he did a lot of mentoring and witnessing there and stuff while he was just hanging out in the coffee shop. Everybody knew him. I used to enjoy sitting in on those grown-up coffee sessions as a kid. And, you know, I'd eventually lose interest and go hang out with the rest of the kids. But lots of people would come visit my parents. I'd say at least weekly, if not a couple times a week. And if missionaries visited our church, about half the time they ended up at our house. And they'd have the long coffee sessions. And if relatives visited, the coffee session was assumed. If they stayed, the coffee session was daily. Younger people often talked to my parents, and 20-somethings often worked as deckhands for my dad, and they'd often end up having the coffee sessions. And that was Ruthie walking around on the tripod there, so sorry about that. But it's funny how my dad would refer to them as kids, and as I would occasionally catch myself as an 8-year-old calling a 20-something a kid. But lots of those sessions are where the base of a conversation would be built on a saying or a quote or a particular verse interpretation that's become famous that my dad would say. Strike while the iron is hot might be heard if my dad thought the idea presented was a good one. Better late than never if the idea still had potential, or no use crying over spilled milk if the idea had passed. And then if the phone rang, Joe's Pool Hall, cue ball speaking, he would answer the phone. That was just his nature. But we already talked about mentorship. And my dad, he was always ready to sit with whoever may come. And as long as my mom was there to make coffee, he'd sit for hours. Ben Franklin said, an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. But what about the idea of seeking out fellowship? Even among peers, there will be strengths and weaknesses. Some can advise and some can learn. Like Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. But what about the idea of sitting around with coffee? Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, Matthew 18:20. In Acts, it talks about the early church model. In Acts 2:42, it says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Was that just a news report of what they did, or was that a model? Is that something that we're supposed to do? Not just a good idea or here's what they did, but something we should do. Hebrews 10:24-25, let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. I don't think that's talking about the church service. Romans 12:13 says, share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. Not all needs are material. I don't think that's talking about material needs primarily. I think that's talking about emotional and psychological and spiritual needs primarily. It may also include material needs, but Galatians 6:2, carry one another's burdens, and this way you'll fulfill the law of Christ. I'm pretty good at lifting heavy things, and I've been borrowed lots to do that. I don't think that's what that's talking about. I don't think those are the burdens in question. 1 Corinthians 14:26. When you come together, each one has a hymn, a lesson, a revelation, a tongue, or an interpretation. Let all things be done for building up. 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Encourage one another and build one another up. 1 Peter 4:9. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. So what has taken the place of those coffee sessions? Or in my case, hot cocoa sessions, because, it's just coffees. What do we do now? Why has it become less common for the parents and the visitors and the missionaries and the friends and the employees to be sitting around the table for hours talking? Has the internet taken the place of the coffee table? Is that a justification we use for not allowing people into our bubble? Oh, I texted with them, or I chatted with them, or I sent them a message, or I posted something encouraging. That's not the same. That's not what we're going for. That's not what it's talking about. It's not what we've lost. And I need this encouragement as much as anyone, but set up a place for guests. Invite people over. Let them see your mess. Let them hear your kids arguing. Let them smell the beautiful smells of the goat that lives in the house. Let others into your bubble and go over into other people's bubbles, especially believers. I think that's far better than the smartphone.